Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my May 2025 reading vlog. So far for this month, I have already read a couple of books. I have started my book for the 100 Epic Reads of a Lifetime reading poster, and that is Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I will get that eventually. I am about 1/3 into it, and so far it is pretty interesting. Of course, I will be discussing it in my vlog dedicated to the poster. And I have also finished my books that I will be discussing in my other video that is coming out earlier in the month, that being my Harley Quinn Mad Love vlog. I read the novelization that came out in 2019 by Paul Dini and Pat Cadigan, as well as rereading the comic story for Mad Love, originally written in 1993 by Paul Dini and Bruce Timm. Of course, once again, all of my thoughts on that will be in that video and will also be in my wrap-up. Now, as for the rest of the month, I have a few contenders for what I'm going to be reading. For the comics that I will be reading this month, these are all of my possible choices. I don't know if I will be getting to all of them. You will see that later in the vlog. I will be doing a reread of Under the Red Hood because I just finished War Games, and War Games takes place literally right before Jason comes back. I have read Hush already as well, but I will not be rereading. And then the next ones to read will be the Paul Dini Batman run, as well as Batman the Resurrection of Ra's al Ghul, and then eventually Batman and Son by Grant Morrison. And another possible contender for the month is The Buffalo Hunter Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones, newly published novel about a vampire in the early 1900s. I'm looking forward to this one. This would be my first Stephen Graham Jones. My mom has read I Was a Teenage Slasher. It's going to be my first. I'm looking forward to it because last month I watched Sinners in theaters, and I think that the similar time period and vampires is going to be really, really exciting. So that is how my month is doing so far. Stay tuned for more updates very soon.
Hello there, this is just a quick update to say that I have finished some things and my opinions on other things that I'm currently reading. I read Batman Under the Red Hood, the deluxe edition, just because I needed to reread Under the Red Hood, as well as this edition including the Lost Days issues that I hadn't read yet. So for my reread of Under the Red Hood, it is still a 5-star. I really like this story. And as for Lost Days, I really enjoyed them as well, so they're getting a 4-star, just some good extra additional context for why Jason did what he did, how he came back, all that good stuff. I then read Batman and Son by Grant Morrison, which is a huge, important, and reinventive run in the Batman stories after everything that happened in the very early 2000s. Of course, this one is famous for introducing Batman's and Talia al Ghul's son, Damian Wayne. And for Damian's introduction, I liked his story, especially with the Man-Bats and all of the Al Ghul stuff. But as for the other two stories in here, things were very convoluted, things were really odd and weird and strange and very hard to follow. I didn't enjoy it very much. The only thing I did enjoy was in that one interluding story with all of the extra kind of Batman knockoffs from different countries was during the flashback scenes. They are done like an old style comic book with all of the shading, all the dots, and all the fun colors, as opposed to the more modern art style of the rest of that issue, and I really liked that. As for everything else in here, I just didn't really connect to it. A lot of it was very hard to understand as well. So while I understand that Morrison's work is hugely important and favored by the Batman reading community, I just didn't connect to it as much, but I understand that this is going to be leading into Batman R.I.P. and Dick Grayson becoming Batman, so I understand why I have to read this. I just did not enjoy this as much. I am still reading Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, and I am enjoying that. I will talk about that more in the vlog, of course, and I am still making my way through The Buffalo Hunter Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. Now, getting used to all of the language in this book, I find myself really connecting to it very well, because at first I did not enjoy the present day introduction to the book where a descendant of one of the characters finds his journals and therefore finds the story that he is being told and recorded in his journals, and I really did not like her voice or perspective. I thought the writing was a little bit icky and I really didn't like it. I didn't connect to it. I didn't think it was very humorous. But as we get into the story set in 1912 and the vampire character who is telling his story, I think that it is just a beautiful display of writing, wonderful storytelling. I am following everything pretty well. There are a few names of people and a few names of animals that you take some getting used to and you really have to pay attention, but then it is splayed out for you, so it is easy to follow if you are really in it. And I think this story is important to read slowly because it is an oral history, so it is something that is being revealed to you very slowly. You can't just rush through a story like this, especially one being told to you person to person, as well as through the character's journal entries. And I really like the insight of the pastor character. I really enjoy his little comments, especially about food and especially about the other people in his village. And I really like the way that the vampire character Goodstab describes things, describes how people move, how like their bodies work, how his view of the world works, and his own shame in what he did in order to become a vampire. This is all very good stuff. I am really enjoying it so far, and I'm glad I am taking my time with it. However, it is due back to the library in a week, so I'm hoping to get through it, not to rush through it, of course, but to get through it before it has to be returned. So the final things I'm going to be reading this month are the Paul Dini Batman Detective Comics run and the Resurrection of Ra's al Ghul, as well as finishing the 2 novels that I am currently reading. So let's hope I can do that, because for some reason at work they are putting me through hell schedule-wise. So let's see if I can make it to the end of the month with everything. Stay tuned. everyone, and welcome to the May wrap-up. So this month I ended up reading 9 books, so let's just get into the final discussion of each one. So for the 100 Epic Reads of a Lifetime poster, I read Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, and I believe I'm giving this one sort of a 3.5 star. As for this book, I thought that it was very, very interesting, well written. There's a lot of really cool stuff on the idea of who is capable of committing a crime. There is a lot of intrigue going on with the characters and who is trying to figure out what. And of course, the main character having this big internal freak out and a lot of fate and luck seemingly being on his side for most of the novel. I will talk more about it in my vlog dedicated to it, but I think I really enjoyed this book. Next, I read Harley Quinn Mad Love by Paul Dini and Pat Cadigan for my Harley Quinn Mad Love reading vlog, and I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I talked more about it in the video dedicated to it, but I thought that it had some interesting details into Harley Quinn's past, and they didn't change the story enough for me to get mad at it. However, there were a few small critiques that I discussed in the vlog, such as the heavy focus on the therapist character, Harley Quinn's boss, a lot of perspective chapters based on her, which I thought was a bit of an odd choice, and I did not like the way that the author wrote Batman. So this one was a solid novelization based on the Mad Love story. Next, I read Under the Red Hood, the Deluxe edition by Judd, Winnick, and others. I reread Under the Red Hood, but I mostly read this edition to read the extra issues of Lost Days in here. And of course, this reread's a 5-star. I love this story so much. I love the story of Under the Red Hood. I think Judd Winnick is the only author to get Jason in the modern context, the only way to write his character properly and write his motivations properly. And I really, really enjoyed this story a lot. I love everything that goes on in it, and I thought the editions of Lost Days was really good too, and I am glad that I read it as well. So, good reread / new read for Lost Days. On the other hand, next I read Batman and Son by Grant Morrison and other collaborators, and this is getting a 1 star from me. The introduction and discussion of Damian Wayne was a very good story. However, the other stories in here were a little bit convoluted for me, and stuff I wasn't really into. I understand the shift into Silver Age focus. I understand this is a hugely impactful and influential graphic novel series. I know a lot of people like Grant Morrison. I just didn't connect to it as much as the other comics that I have read, and I just thought that the layout was a bit too confusing, and I just didn't feel compelled by anything I was reading. So while Damian is a wonderful introduction to the Batman canon, I think the rest of this graphic novel was a little bit off. I then read Paul Dini's Detective Comics run, that being Batman Detective and Batman Death in the City, and both of these got 3 stars from me. I thought they were pretty standard Paul Dini writing, just little episodic issues about Batman solving little crimes and dealing with little things. I thought that it was a little bit more mature than the usual DCAU stuff that Paul Dini has written, obviously because it is the full comic run. He's allowed to go a little bit more mature. So there's certain parts that are set in sex clubs, and there's more murder and torture and stuff, but I didn't think he went too far in what he was doing, aside from a few of the choices made with Poison Ivy. However, she is meant to be a character that is exploitative of that sexualization of women and all of that. She's supposed to be subverting stuff. She's supposed to be playing into that sort of thing. So while it was teetering the line of a little bit awkward, I thought that it was okay. And yeah, these are just pretty good standard Detective Comics runs. And I finished off my comics reading with Batman: The Resurrection of Ra's al Ghul by Grant Morrison, Paul Dini, and other collaborators. And this is another 3-star from me. I thought this story was very good. Once again, I really enjoy the sort of direction that the Ghul's always go into, all this mysticism, all this talk of immortality and death and possession. And I really liked the idea that Ra's al Ghul was trying to find a body to possess, either being Damien or later Tim when he is dealing with a lot of death and stuff, and almost agrees to Ra's al Ghul's collaboration. So I thought this story was really, really good, and I enjoyed it very, very much. As for the Grant Morrison writing in this, I thought this was a bit better, so maybe I just enjoy more of a focused, planned story rather than the episodic stuff from Grant Morrison, but we shall see if I read any more of their writing. I am also currently reading another ebook because I had some time before work for a book and I forgot to bring a physical book with me. So I am currently reading Phaedra by Laura Shepperson, and so far I think this is not a very good Greek myth retelling. If you don't know, Phaedra was the sister of Ariadne and the daughter of King Minos, the man who has the labyrinth and holds the Minotaur within that labyrinth. So Phaedra, after the events of the labyrinth, of the slaying of the Minotaur under the hands of Theseus, she is then married off to him, and then her story is involved with Theseus's son Hippolytus. She accuses him of assaulting her and then kills herself. It is part of a Greek tragedy. And so far in this book, this retelling is very juvenile. It is supposed to reflect that Phaedra is so young. And I always assume that when people are going to do the story of the labyrinth, that they're going to make it very Hunger Games, because it is a bunch of youths being put in the labyrinth to be eaten by the Minotaur. So it's always a big fight to the death. However, the labyrinth story was brushed aside, and the story is more focused on Phaedra going to live with Theseus and dealing with a Hippolytus who doesn't like her. And she also really likes to paint, and she has this relationship. It's just a court of thorns and roses. The author somehow turned Greek myth into a court of thorns and roses. There is also these odd perspective changes to focus on Medea, who is hardly in this myth at all, as well as other characters who just end up dying, so I don't understand why the perspective has to change. I just think that is a weakness on the author's part. So while I am not done that story, I don't think I will give it a very high rating, and it is just not a very good Greek myth retelling. However, I do try to seek those out to see how they fare. So, though I don't have a final rating for that yet, I'm going to assume it will be low. And the final book that I read this month that I am going to discuss is The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. Now, this is my first book from this author. I know he's written a lot of very popular horror and a lot of popular slasher-style horror stuff, but this one is a historical horror based in 1912, where a pastor is writing in his diary and encounters a Native American vampire who then tells his life story. The rest of the book is bookended by his descendant, who then finds these diaries and then has consequences as a result. This book for me is going to be a 4.5. It would have been a perfect 5-star if it weren't for those modern bookends. I did not like that character at all. I did not like her writing style. And I thought that how she described things and how she wrote was just very off-putting. And that was the first chapter I read in the novel. So I thought I was not going to like this novel because of her. So I can't give it a perfect 5-star because of that. But aside from that, I really, really enjoyed this novel. I enjoyed the writing style of both the pastor and the storytelling style of the vampire. I thought that they were both distinct and beautiful, and it was hard to get into at first. I just had to read slow and really take it in, and I greatly benefited from that. This is not a book that you can read all in one day. This book needs to sit with you for a bit, because the vampire doesn't tell this story in one day. He tells it over the course of, I believe, a month, maybe more. And it is just a beautiful story. What a wonderful depiction of colonization by the Europeans in America, reflecting on this vampire losing his own sense of community and identity and humanity. As time goes on and all the buffalo get killed and all of his people are getting massacred, he is also losing his sense of humanity and what it meant for him to be Blackfeet, and just everything
everything, the way that the more he eats, the more he changes, and it is just such a really cool metaphor and lore that I've never seen in a vampire novel before, as well as the pastor going through his own internal conflict and his own emotions and his own regrets that he had in his life, and deciding what is sinful and how he can even judge a character who does not follow his religion, who to him is completely inhuman, both in being Native American and in being a vampire, and how he comes to terms with that, and how they build this relationship together. And there's also just a wonderful story of vengeance in here. There's pretty horrific stuff. It is a horror novel, but it is all in the sense of vengeance, and I just think that this is a wonderful novel. This is going to be one of my favorite vampire standalones I think I'll ever read. I could just talk your ear off about this. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was beautiful and moving and powerful and evocative and horrifying, and I just thought that the vampire was really cool. I liked what he was going through. I liked what he did. And I liked that a lot of what he did had a great big plan, like how it took him so long to enact his plan. I just think that it was great stuff. I really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend it if you are into vampire fiction. I really liked this. So that's it. That was my reading month of May. I'm really hoping that where I live really brings in more summer weather. We have been stuck in this kind of rainy, horrible early spring when it's going to be June soon. So I'm really hoping that we get at least a proper spring into summer very soon. As for what I will be reading, you will have to see next month. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.